with public schools, K through 12, school districts all over the U.S. and eventually worldwide in about 21 countries. When they started this, again, it was new and different. It was innovation, but it wasn't innovation like we've already got the solution, you'd better like it, or we already have the technology. So in Philadelphia, their work partnered with the school. The school had decided that literacy was one of their really key problems, but they couldn't afford all the special classrooms and special ed teachers to pull the kids out who needed special help learning to read. In fact, City Year is now working on the problems of literacy and reading. So IBM had some technology, voice recognition technology. And they started to work with the school, figuring that reading machines of various kinds, workstations, and by the way, I've seen some of their Kid Smart workstations in rural villages in India, and it's inspiring to think that we're bringing whole populations into the 21st century. But IBM then had voice recognition technology to contribute to the schools. The problem was it only recognized middle-aged male voices with Midwestern accents. So IBM, in order to fulfill the partnership it now had with the school, not a charitable donation, but a partnership to learn, they had to innovate again. It stretched them. The people in the research labs went and lived in the schools. They actually gave them a little janitor's closet, the only space, and put a desk in there, and they stretched their technology so that it could recognize children's high-pitched voices and 140 accents, which we may have in the public schools these days because of the diversity not only of countries but of ethnicities within countries that kids come from. And they developed something that was then called Watch Me Read. Now it's called Reading Companion. You can find it on the web. It's now used to teach adults how to read. It's inspiring, but the fact is they led innovation by going outside to the social sector, just as companies are going out to look at environmental problems or community problems and finding that triggers new and better ideas that enrich the core business, because IBM certainly did this without thinking about gain immediately, but they got learning. And I believe that's very important. 21st century leaders know how to learn and listen from the ground up. I now call it leadership yoga, because yoga is a stretch, an exercise of stretching, often involving standing on one's head. And in some ways, these companies are standing on their head by learning from the grassroots. The world looks very different when you stand on your head. You see the grass, you see the grassroots. You also see the dirt that needs cleaning up. It's a very different view from the view from headquarters. And so listening and learning by stretching, and this is where values are and a sense of purpose are leading companies to learn from their connections with communities. And the third thing that 21st century leaders do is they do have new partnerships, and their partnership orientation is enhanced because they're partnering, first of all, with nonprofits and NGOs all the time for mutual learning. They are also taking responsibility. 21st century leaders take responsibility not just for their piece of the equation, but they take responsibility at every end, from their supplier's supplier to their customer's customer, for the end user and the people who are responsible for the raw materials or the input. Now, this is a demand society is making on business. It's what forced Starbucks to look at who's growing the coffee. Now they're looking at how much water goes into the cup, to get a cup, 1 cup of coffee. Nike had to make changes. Levi Strauss changed child labor laws in Bangladesh, got them changed, influenced the change because of U.S. consumers demanding it. Companies are waking up to this reality, but it's a message for all of us, because if we're taking end-to-end responsibility, we need a different kind of partnership so that companies with high standards and principles influence their partners to meet equally high standards, and they are united in a sense of purpose. So the new marketing for the 21st century is migrating quickly from companies showing off what they have to companies engaging their consumers, their users, their partnership in some form of joint service so that they make a difference in the world together, and that cements loyalty and learning, and it spreads high standards across the supply chain. So Cemex, a Mexican cement company, which happens to meet very high environmental standards for a company in an industry associated with dust in our lungs, Cemex it's a small business developer. In Latin America, they created a brand called Consterama for small hardware stores who could get that brand, get Cemex products. Cemex was an innovator in bagged cement that's branded, and also, by the way, in antibacterial cement, which is really great for hospitals. Cemex engages those small distributors, gives them computers, trains them, and takes them out to do joint community service, physical service, repairing schools, spreading standards and values while developing business in their country. And there are huge applications and huge networks that are forming to do this. IBM had a new development outside of their laboratory, came out of the laboratory, that was grid computing technology, which allows you to tie together the computing power of computers that are on but not being used. You can make a network that's as powerful as a supercomputer. And instead of simply going out to sell that to the retailers and banks who could use that kind of data analysis capacity, IBM decided to give it away first to causes. First, not after they've made their profits, but first. They call it World Community Grid, and it's an enormous partnership. You too could go to worldcommunitygrid.org and donate the time your computer is on. City Year is a partner. Nonprofits are partners. IBM's business partners are partners. IBM employees are inspired. They can look at the work being done on projects to cure AIDS or end heart disease. Well, end heart disease until end of life. They are map rivers. You can learn, an IBM employee can see what project their computer power is being used on. It's inspiring, it's in line with the purpose, it's doing good for the world, and it's solidifying a partner network where customers as well as suppliers would rather be engaged around their values, contributing to something good, than simply be sold to or sell. So it's transforming relationships and can transform in the 21st century business relationships from mere transactions to mutual engagement in making the world a better place. And fourth, the employees themselves are inspired by this. 21st century leaders, I've already said, some of the ways they increasingly treat employees. Employees are sources of information and ideas from the bottom up. So their part of their networks are encouraged as well. And when IBM went on the web, on their web chat about innovation priorities, they could already build on self-organizing networks of employees who were talking to one another from around the world or around the country about what they were seeing in the world that ought to be priorities for IBM. So it was a group of professionals, when Second Life became available, who started playing with virtual worlds, which became a priority for IBM. It was people in the UK talking with people in the US through networks, through technology, who decided green computing needed to be a priority for IBM. And in fact, the UK and Europe were ahead of the US in the new green business opportunities. So the new way of running a company, 21st century leadership, is leading with purpose, values, and principles and making them a part of the daily conversation. It's innovating by going beyond the establishment. I talk about it as not just thinking outside the box, but thinking outside the building. Going out into the community or into society as a way to not only contribute, but to learn and trigger innovation, because you have to solve challenging problems.